follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and all that good stuff. Now, this is going to be mostly an NBA midseason recap episode. There's been a lot going on with the NBA since the last time I've really sat down and done a deep dive on it. And so let's just look at the state of things right now because All-Star weekend is done. No more trades. This is what we've got going into the second half of the season and the playoffs. So right now in the Eastern Conference, the teams in playoff contention are the Cavaliers, the Celtics, the Knicks, the Pacers, the Bucks, the Pistons, the Magic, and the Heat. And then the Hawks are the ninth seed right now, so they're one game out of playoff contention. They're currently back two from the Heat. They are one spot out of playoff contention. They're down two games from the Heat. The Heat have a record of 26 and 28. The Hawks have a record of 26 and 30. So it's possible if the Hawks get hot and the Heat get cold, ironically, they could work their way into the eighth seed, but we'll see. The Cavs are very dominant in the East right now. They're up on the two seed Celtics by 5 games, and they've been hot the whole season. I mean, at this point, obviously, if they both lost every single game, they won't end up at that spot. But the Cavs and the Celtics look like they're pretty much going to lock down the first and second seeds. The Cavs have won 46, Celtics have won 41, and then the Knicks have won 37 games. So they're a couple games back from the Celtics, but it's possible could jump up. But then once you get past the third seed, it just falls off a cliff. The Pacers are 6 games behind the Knicks. The Bucks are at the same. So they're just like one little bit of a drop down, two little drop down, three, and then boom, and you've got the rest of the crew. Now over in the Western Conference, you've got the Thunder are the one seed right now. Then you've got the Grizzlies, and the Nuggets, then the Lakers, then the Rockets, and the Clippers, then the Timberwolves and the Mavericks, and then the Warriors are one game behind the Mavericks in playoff contention right now, which the Warriors beat the heck out of the Mavericks tonight. So there's a good shot, given the role that the Warriors have been on lately, that they'll work their way into playoff contention before the season is over. Jimmy Butler has been a good boost to their roster, but we'll get into that later. In the Western Conference, it's a lot more competitive than the East. The Warriors are the ninth seed in the West, whereas if you put them in the East, they would be the sixth or seventh seed. So I just showed you historically the Western Conference has always been stronger than the East. That remains true to this day. There was a little bit of time in like the early 2020s when the East was the dominant one, but we're back to business as usual. The Thunder are 8 games ahead of the second seed Grizzlies, and unlike the East, where it's like the first three teams are kind of a cut above the rest, it's pretty much the Thunder, and then everybody else is duking it out. So, I mean, to a degree. The second seeded Grizzlies are 2 games or are 6 games ahead of the 8 seeded Mavs, whereas the second seeded Celtics are about 15 games ahead of the 8 seeded Heat. So a lot less of a disparity in the West than there is the East, but I'm excited to see how it shakes out. And there's been a lot of roster movement given the trade deadline just came to pass. And there are three things that I'm going to focus on the most here. One is obviously the Luka Doncic and Anthony Davis trade. That, to my mind, is the biggest trade in NBA history, at least off the top of my head. I can't think of one that rivals it. If the Chris Paul trade had gone through in 2011, that might have done the trick, but David Stern put the kibosh on that one. Then we've got Jimmy Butler to the Warriors, and then Greg Popovich and Victor Wembanyama are out for the season on the Spurs. Now the Spurs weren't a playoff team, so that's not going to have a major impact on that, but that is still something I felt like it was worth talking about. And there's not as much to say as the other two, so I'll just get that out of the way first. Greg Popovich unfortunately suffered a stroke in mid-November, and the report just came out today that he won't be back for the rest of the season, and his future is uncertain for next year. It looks like this might very well be the end of Greg Popovich as the coach of the San Antonio Spurs. He's also the president of the organization. Now, he could step down from coaching and still be the team president. That could be a less stressful job. I don't know how that works, but certainly a less physically demanding job than having to travel to be on the sidelines at all the games, at all the practices, all that stuff. President would be a less hands-on position, at least in the basketball setting, I would think. Popovich is 76 and has been the Spurs coach since 1966 or 1996. He's old. He's not that old. Um, so if this is the end, you hate to see it come out that way and not, you know, after a great playoff run or something like that. But he's solidified his legacy as a Mount Rushmore caliber coach in the NBA. I mean, certainly him, Pat Riley, Phil Jackson, and Red Auerbach. That's the big four. What order you want to put it in, you could sit and debate that all day, but Popovich is an all-timer, and it's sad to see his career come to an end like this, if this really is it. Now, Wemby, his career is just getting started, and he suffered what seems to be a major setback. He's out for the season because the team doctors found a blood clot in his shoulder. It was a deep vein thrombosis, is the official definition or label for what he was diagnosed with. After the All-Star game on Sunday, he told the team doctors his arm wasn't feeling well, and they looked into it. They found the blood clot. He's on blood thinner, which, if anybody knows about blood thinner, physical contact is not recommended, and so he's going to be out for the rest of the season while he's taking the blood thinner in order to get rid of the clot. And the doctors say he should be back and ready to go by the start of next season. The Spurs weren't going to make a deep playoff run anyways, so it's not like this is a major ramifications for their season, but given his youth and everything, as much game experience as he can get is great. And I'm not sure, since he's not going to be able to play because of all the physical contact, what that means for his ability to train. I mean, yeah, I'm not sure how that shakes out. But if he is able to, at least in a couple weeks, couple months maybe after he's been on or off the blood thinner for a little bit, this could work out better for him in the long run, give him time to sit and focus on his game and spend extra time in the gym instead of actually playing. But hopefully he can show his grit and determination and bounce back better next season. Now, the big news NBA wise since the last time we've talked basketball on the podcast is the trade for or between the Lakers and the Mavericks, where Luka Doncic is now a Los Angeles Laker and Anthony Davis is now a Dallas Maverick. This is the first trade in NBA history that featured two All NBA players in the middle of the season. The Lakers got out of this deal Luka, Max Kleber, Markieff Morris, and $55,000 from the Jazz because you can always take some cash. The Mavs got AD, Max Christie, and another $55,000 for the Jazz. They were just throwing out that money like crazy. And the Jazz got Jalen Hood, Schifino, which is the first and probably last time I will ever say his name, and 2 second-round draft picks in the upcoming NBA draft. So the Mavericks allegedly thought that Luka Doncic was not in well enough shape. His conditioning wasn't what they wanted it to be. They thought that he was spoiled and lazy, is essentially what it comes down to. And the team claims that they had made suggestions or asked him to get in shape, do this, do that, and he just ignored all of their requests. And so they got sick and tired of it, and they didn't want him anymore. They didn't think that a player of Luka Doncic's work ethic would be good enough to lead them to a championship. So they traded him. And they felt that what they were lacking on their team was defense. So they traded him for Anthony Davis, who was a defensive anchor for the Lakers. That was the only team that the Mavericks appeared to have any interest in working a deal with. It wasn't like they shopped Luka out in the market. It seems like they were trying to do it as secretly as possible so as not to have it leak out and have it blow up in their face. Because if it did leak out and the Lakers got cold feet or the Mavs got cold feet because of the fan backlash, then you have an unhappy Luka Doncic on your hands because you just tried to trade him. But so they kept it secret and they did trade him. And Mavericks fans were irate. A lot of them canceled their season tickets. A lot of them, they held a protest at the Mavericks arena the day after the trade went down. They even brought in a fake coffin to host a mock funeral for the franchise. So just very strong reactions coming out of it. And it's one of those deals where I get the spirit behind what the Mavericks wanted to do. Don't think they thought it through well enough, and I think that Anthony Davis's first game with them should have, really hammered home that point. When if you think Luka Doncic is lazy, doesn't work hard, out of shape, whatever, like fine, but why would you trade him for Anthony Davis, who's 6 years older than him, as one of the most injury-prone players of all time? Now, in a vacuum, if AD is healthy, in the short term, I think there's a very good argument to be made that he will get the Mavericks deeper into the playoffs or is more likely to get them a championship than Luka would be because he fits better with Kyrie and Klay Thompson. So now you have a great ball dominant point guard with Kyrie. You have a good defensive presence down low who can also get you 35 and 15 on any given night. And you got a spot up shooter at the three with Klay Thompson, who's not what he used to be, but he can still shoot. That sounds like a lot more complete of a team than Kyrie, Luka, and Klay. But as I alluded to earlier, Anthony Davis is made of glass. And his first game with the Mavericks, he showed you like the peak of the potential, like everything they could possibly have wanted from him. He gave it to him. He got hurt within 31 minutes of playing, but when he was healthy, he had 26 points, 7 assists, 16 rebounds, and 3 blocks. Now, if he didn't get hurt and he was around for the season and he continued that level of production, I think the Mavericks have to be taken seriously as a deep playoff threat. But he's been out for the last 12 days and he's got no return set in sight. And it's not like this is an anomaly. This is something Anthony Davis has always done. The one season where he was able to be a part of a team that broke through and won a championship was during COVID in the bubble, where he got to take a massive 3-4 month break during the season. So they shouldn't be surprised that they trade for Anthony Davis and he immediately gets hurt, which is why if you're going to trade Luka Doncic, I don't see why you would do it for Anthony Davis when there are other players that could have gotten you roughly the same result. Giannis, if I'm the Mavericks and I'm looking to move Luka, I'm trading for Giannis. He put him down low. He could be a power forward. I know he usually plays more on the ball than off, but he's everything that Anthony Davis could be, if not more versatile. Plus, he lacks the injury history that AD has. So I really just don't understand the seeming infatuation that the Mavs front office had with AD. But the Lakers made out like a bandit. They just flipped a house that was a good house into a mansion. I mean, AD, like injury prone, great player when he's healthy. he was not going to lead that team to any championships in the post LeBron era. And that's where the team's going to find themselves in at most 3 years when LeBron stepped away. So now they have Luka, who's 25 years old, roughly 26, 25, somewhere in there. So they have their future now for the next at least 5 to 6 years, barring any catastrophic injury. Luka Doncic will be an All NBA caliber player that you can build your team around. And the Lakers, this is the first move since LeBron has got there, at least from my perspective, they've made where they put the franchise ahead of LeBron. Whether or not LeBron knew about this trade, I don't know. Because he claims he didn't. He said he was just as surprised as everybody else and that he was shocked and had to spend like hours getting himself like emotionally like to comprehend what just happened. And Anthony Davis is in Clutch Sports. Rich Paul, LeBron James is one of his childhood best friends, is Anthony Davis's agent. So I don't know. I can buy that LeBron didn't know, but I could also have seen a world where LeBron doesn't want to have to take the flack of knowing. And it's kind of like a Shawn Michaels in the Montreal Screwjob in 1997, where Vince McMahon told Shawn to play it dumb like he didn't know what was going to happen, at least to Bret Hart. And after the match, Bret confronted Shawn, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, no, I had no idea that was happening." Like I could see LeBron be a Machiavellian like that too, but I'll take him at his word. Assume he didn't know, and this was the Lakers being independent, at which I'd have to say good for the Lakers. Now, since the trade, Luka had his press conference a couple days afterwards. He said he was nearly asleep when he got the news and that he was going through very hard moments since, and that loyalty is a big word for him, and that he obviously feels betrayed. He didn't say this, but I mean, the read between the lines there, he feels like the Mavericks were disloyal and probably feels very hurt and betrayed. Luka apparently, according to Chandler Parsons, a former Mavericks teammate of his, cried after receiving the news. Nico Harrison said he called Luka afterwards, but Luka didn't answer, understandably so. That's kind of a douchebag move to trade somebody just to completely upend their life. Luka had allegedly just bought a $15 million home in Dallas, and to like dump them and then afterwards sit and call and have a conversation when it sounds like there were some conversations that needed to have been had earlier, because the Maverick story, like I said earlier, was that Luka was not in shape and wasn't working hard enough. They told him to do better. He wasn't, so they just cut tail and ran and traded him. Luka's version of events is he was very blindsided, had no idea this was going to happen. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. They probably made some, hints or allusions to, hey, you should start doing this or you need to work out more. But Luka didn't get the hint or didn't think it was as pressing of an issue as the Mavs clearly did. Because for you to trade a 25-year-old MVP caliber player, like that's unheard of. And it's one of those deals where if Luka wins a championship with the Lakers and the Mavericks don't win one with AD, anybody in the front office that was involved with that trade, Nico Harrison, they're toast. That is going to be like the end of their NBA career. They better hope that they have really good friends in the Mavericks ownership, because if this trade blows up in their face, they're cooked. And they should be, because part of being a great businessman, a great leader, is rolling the dice and being willing to make the moves that nobody else will. But another part of that is when you do roll the dice and it doesn't fall in your favor, you've got to take the consequences of that. You just gambled big. You just bet the house. And if you lose the house with nothing in return, you got to go. So for their sakes, I hope Anthony Davis gets healthy. He gets some glue and some duct tape and ties up his knee joints together. But we'll have to see how that shakes out. The Lakers have been 6-8 since they've gotten Luka. He hasn't played in all those games. He's played in 4. They're actually 2-4 with Luka. He was also injured himself, which was part of, I think, the Mavs' problem because of his lack of shape in their mind. He's been having some nagging strains, and they felt that if he worked out more, he would not have these problems. But regardless, Luka, he's been playing, but he's been on a minutes restriction at least for the first couple games. So he's averaging 19 points, 5.7 assists, and 7.5 rebounds, and seems to be on to a good start. He had a mammoth game today against the Nuggets. Pretty sure he had a triple-double, had like 30-something points. They just completely crushed the Nuggets, which is a rare thing for the Lakers to do because the Nuggets have been the bane of the Lakers' existence for the last like 3 or so years. And I'm imagining Luka's going to have a monster game on Tuesday too because the Lakers are playing the Mavericks. First time meeting since the trade. So Luka's going to have a lot to prove. Unfortunately, Anthony Davis isn't going to be there just because, you can't have it all. The storylines, they can be good, but they can't always be great. So we're not going to get the first Mavericks-Lakers matchup post-trade to involve both Luka and AD. And we'll see how that shakes out. I'm guessing the Lakers are going to completely rout the Mavericks, but we'll see. Now, the other big trade was Jimmy Butler to the Warriors. It was a 5-team trade, unlike the AD-Luka trade. I'm not going to break it down that in depth because it's not as important. But basically, the Warriors got Jimmy Butler and the Heat got Andrew Wiggins. The Warriors have been 5-6 since the trade. They beat the Mavs today, 126-102. Steph scored 30, had 7 assists and 4 rebounds. Jimmy Butler had 18 points, 5 assists, and 3 rebounds. So, it's looking like they've been doing great since they've gotten Jimmy. They've been running a lot of pick and rolls, and that's a heck of a duo. You have Steph coming down with a floater. If not, kick it back out to Jimmy for the mid-range. That's going to be hard to beat, and I certainly think that the Warriors are going to slide their way into playoff contention. Now, just how far up they can go, currently they're 2 games back from the 6th seed, and I think that'll be roughly where they make it. I think 6th, 7th seed, something like that. They'll probably be a first round out. Though if playoff Jimmy shows up, they might pull off a major upset against a team like the Grizzlies that is a very young team that lacks the veteran experience that the Warriors would be providing there. So there's an opportunity for a great, exciting playoff matchup. And that's where we're sitting at the NBA right now. 2 other quick updates since the last time I've been able to sit down and go on the pod. The Eagles won the Super Bowl 40-22, just completely wiped the floor with the Chiefs. So much for the three-peat. And it just really, I'm not going to take credit because I predicted the Chiefs would lose a lot more than they did this season, and a broken clock is right even twice a day. If you keep betting on the Chiefs to lose, eventually they'll be right. But I do feel like this game showed what I had been alluding to all season, that the Chiefs just didn't feel like that same team. Great record, not as good if you sat down and watched a game as it looked on paper. Finally, they got put up against a team that could take advantage of it. And it really makes me look back on that AFC Championship game and think that there's just something that the Chiefs have mentally on Buffalo that allows them to always seem to come up big against the Bills that they don't have against other teams, because the Eagles, it wasn't even a contest. The final score was 40-22, and that was because the Chiefs got 2 garbage time touchdowns. The game, that was one of the most boring Super Bowls I've ever seen. It reminded me of the Panthers and Broncos Super Bowl from 2016, of Peyton Manning's last game, where it was just it was a joke. And the most entertaining part of that Super Bowl was a halftime show and seeing Drake get roasted in front of 100 million people. And I just want to comment on that Kendrick Lamar meme where it's a smile on his face before he said, "Hey, Drake." You could see he just had so much hate in his heart that he was just about to let out in front of the entire world. And Drake was there live, watching. Apparently, he was sitting on his phone during the halftime performance, which I can't tell if that's a power move or just depressing. Probably more depressing than anything. Just yeah, Drake got cooked too in that beef. But Travis Kelce was a shell of himself in that Super Bowl. I don't. I mean, he probably. I think Levi thinks he's got 2 years left. I'd agree with that, but he's clearly not the same Travis Kelce that he was 2 years ago, even. So if Patrick Mahomes is going to continue this successful run that he's been on, continue to be a contending caliber player on a good team, they're going to have to make some major roster moves and get him more help. Because otherwise, he's going to enter into his Brady from 2006 to 2013 phase of his career, where he continues to put up great numbers, but he just doesn't have notable playoff success. And I want to put a pin in any Patrick Mahomes GOAT conversations for the foreseeable future. Now, I don't think these are conversations that should be being had at this point in his career. However, all the media outlets, Fox, ESPN, whatever you prefer to watch, they were all talking before the game about what does this mean for Patrick Mahomes if he wins here, if he three-peats. This is something nobody's ever done before in the Super Bowl era. What does this mean? Like, will this put him on par with Brady? And it's just got to stop. Patrick Mahomes has won 3 Super Bowls. That's a great accomplishment. You can never take that away from him. He's 3-5. He's been to half the amount of Super Bowls as Brady and has already lost basically the same amount. Brady's got one more loss on him. So it's not like it's a deal where, yeah, Brady was 7-3, but Mahomes is like 4-0 undefeated like Joe Montana type performance. Mahomes has got 2 losses, one of which came to Brady. So I don't want to hear any comparisons unless Mahomes goes nuts and wins like 5 straight MVPs and like 3 more Super Bowls and what have you. But the Patrick Mahomes Joe Montana debate, that's a lot more interesting. And I wish that was something that the mainstream outlets would be interested in having, because until Brady beat the Falcons, it was not, conclusive that he was the GOAT. Everybody was still saying, yeah, he's got, 4 rings, but like Joe Montana, he was just so much more skilled than Brady, like whatever. So basically, just if you're gonna like have taken it years for Brady to jump past Joe Montana the way he did, I mean Brady, people weren't confidently saying that Brady was the GOAT until he was like in his like almost 15th season. You can't just slide Patrick Mahomes past Joe Montana because Joe Montana doesn't make for as fun of a debating partner as Tom Brady in terms of Patrick Mahomes. And Montana, he's still got more Super Bowls than Mahomes. He might have more MVPs. Let me check real quick. But I think you can't discount him, and it's sad when you see the, big media people out there just doing a disservice. So, okay, same amount of MVPs roughly. 3-time Super Bowl MVP, so already. But that's a fun debate, basically. That's all I'm going to say. And I wish that it would be entertained more than it currently is. Now, in WWE news, Jey Uso won the Royal Rumble. A lot of people were unhappy with that. I'm not the biggest fan, but I'm cautiously seeing where this goes. I'm glad that Stone Cold's record of 3 Royal Rumble wins still holds true. I'd be lying if I said, though, at the final 2 that I wasn't rooting for Cena to pull it out. Now it adds a level of intrigue going into the Sunday, or next Sunday, it's the Elimination Chamber. I was disappointed with Cena in particular that they didn't give him the amount of like one-off interactions in the Royal Rumble that they could have. So you could have had Cena have a face-off with CM Punk, and the place would have exploded. Cena and Logan Paul. I don't even think they were in the match at the same time, but Cena and Joe Hendry, Cena and Roman Reigns, so many different face-offs that you could have teased matches for this year, and they just never materialized. And I don't really know why that is. It could have been a lot of fun, but the Elimination Chamber is going to feature 4 matches, 2 of which I'll cover here. The other 2 I just am not that interested in. You got John Cena versus CM Punk versus Logan Paul versus Damian Priest versus Drew McIntyre versus Seth Rollins. And the winner of that match will go on to face Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania. I think it's a 2-person match between John Cena and CM Punk. And what happened on Friday with The Rock returning to SmackDown and telling Cody Rhodes that he wants his soul, whatever that means, and The Rock has said that he'll be at Elimination Chamber on Sunday, and him and Cody are going to have a face-to-face to hash out, their business, whatever it may be. And Cody's going to say no, and The Rock will presumably, because he pitched it as he wants Cody's soul, he wants Cody to be his champion. Cody will say no. I would imagine then that if Cody won't be The Rock's champion, The Rock will find somebody else that will be his champion, and he'll be essentially an avatar for The Rock to fight Cody Rhodes because The Rock himself isn't going to have a match. And who that champion will be, I have no clue. The 2 biggest names being floated around are John Cena and CM Punk because, they're the winners of the Elimination Chamber. So if The Rock is trying to get somebody to, take the title off of Cody, and they're doing this right before WrestleMania, so presumably that would be the WrestleMania match, and they've already have a match to determine who's facing Cody. So unless The Rock finds a way to worm somebody else into that match that's not already in it, then he's basically picking from one of those 6 names that I just listed off. And the 2 likely scenarios are Cena wins, Cena turns heel, and teams up with The Rock to beat Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania, or John Cena wins the Elimination Chamber, CM Punk teams up with The Rock, The Rock uses his clout to get CM Punk involved in that match, and it becomes a triple threat at WrestleMania, Cena versus Punk versus Cody. I don't really like either one of those options, to be honest. It's definitely interesting, but the story that I've been pitching for this for months now, and that I wish they'd do, which they have the potential to, is just straight up John Cena versus Cody at WrestleMania. Cena wins the Elimination Chamber, goes on to have a story with Cody. There's no need to get The Rock involved in that. The Rock, I'm interested in seeing The Rock and Cody, but after Raw on Netflix, I don't get what the logic was there. It seems like they're trying to make it fit because The Rock is trying to woo Cody over to his side, so you can look back on that and say, oh well, the Netflix thing was just The Rock trying to butter Cody up. But I don't know, it just seems very thrown together at the last minute, which is exactly what the reports say it was. Supposedly, The Rock caused WWE to have to rewrite their plans the day before SmackDown because he just told them that, hey, I want to be involved in WrestleMania, which is just crazy to do. I know The Rock is a busy man and all, but you've got to know at least vaguely what your schedule is going to look like in a month out. I have a calendar. I'm a lot less busy than The Rock is, but I could basically tell you what my next month's going to look like, at least on paper. So, the idea that The Rock just gets a wild hair and decides, oh, I have some free time, I can go do the WrestleMania thing, and bursts in after they've already been putting their plans in motion, I don't know, it just seems like not a nice thing to do. So, hopefully they can still make it work and make it all make sense, but I want babyface Cena versus babyface Cody at WrestleMania, and I want Cena to go over to win the title. Don't think it'll happen that way, but a man can dream. And I don't see Cena teaming up to turn heel with The Rock just because it's his retirement tour. There was a time where a Cena heel turn could have been awesome. back 10, at this point, probably like 13 years ago. Would have been huge. But now he's about to retire. Every place he goes, it's going to be his last time pretty much being in that arena. The fans are going to want to cheer him. They're going to want to give him his flowers. And somebody's last time, his last run, you want to experience the essence of that person for the last time. Like the John Cena character, like people want to be able to soak it in the last time that they'll have the opportunity to. So it would be weird if all of a sudden in his retirement tour he introduces a completely new character that is the antithesis of everything that he's been standing for the last almost 20 years at this point. I mean, it's like shades of Stone Cold or WrestleMania 17 when he sold out to join Vince. You can kind of tell that story, but that heel turn didn't work out great for the company or for Stone Cold. And I don't think a John Cena heel turn would really do that much. It would pop a rating probably the next night on Raw just out of intrigue, but long term, I don't think it's a good move. If The Rock does have to have a corporate champion fighting Cody at WrestleMania, I hope it's CM Punk. That could be a lot more interesting and a lot more long term beef to that story because CM Punk will be around next year. So that's a interesting development to keep an eye on as well. And that being said, that is this week in sports, and I will see y'all next time.